welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, day number 5, as we continue things with the round of 12. It's our final series in the round of 12, and oh boy, is it a good one, because we are going to have Stats going up against Nerchio, our remaining Polish player, to find out who moves on into the round of 8. Joining me on the desk, we do have Mr. Piggly Wiggly, and we have lovely Todd over at the very end as well. Still too tall. And overall, this game, guys, between Stats and Pig, not Pig, you're not playing, that would be weird, and Nerchio is going to be a cracker. There you go, Todd.
You got there eventually, good job, Katowice. Yeah, a great matchup coming up. These two have a little bit of history. They've met in the past a couple times. And actually for this very tournament, they played in a qualifier about a month ago. Nerchio was able to beat Stats 2-0, so that's the good way to look at it. The bad way to look at it is how on fire Stats has been recently. Yeah. Just killing it in the GSL, playing great, beating Innovation 3-2 in the quarterfinals. He's just been on an absolute tear, which makes me a little bit worried for Nerchio. So hopefully he's on his A game today, because he's going to need nothing else on his A game here to beat Stats.
Didn't have to beat any Zergs in his group stage, but in the open bracket, he smashed Zergs. So is that a little bit scary here for Nerchio?
Yeah, definitely. Stats is one of the most solid, well-rounded Protoss players. We always talk about his consistency, but the reason he has that consistency is because he's a master of early game, mid game, and late game. He's the full package Protoss, and this is something where we know Nerchio, he's got a great early game. He can defend a lot of players like Patience, usually quite handily. But against someone like Stats, who very well might just sit back and build carriers or Tempests, or just build 4 bases and defend, these are the areas where Nerchio traditionally struggles, so he definitely has his work cut out for him.
Stats beat some Zergs, but they were none of the caliber of Nerchio. Like, no offense today, it was just two unknown Polish players and Bly. And Nerchio, on the other hand, is 3-1 against South Korean players here in this tournament. His only loss being to Zest. So don't count him out, is what I'm saying.
Good opportunities for both of them here now as we get into our next round of 12. It's going to be the last Polish hope looking to impress the crowd and move on into the round of 8, going up against Stats, second place from the Intel Extreme Masters Gyeonggi, hungry for a title.
Up next, guys, is a round of 12 match you have all been waiting for. It's the only Protoss left in this tournament, going up against the only Polish player left in this tournament. Give it up for Stats and Nerchio!
Sick. Nerchio versus Stats. We are Tastosis. Artie, it's good to have the band back together.
Yeah, man, and especially for a match like this. The best from Korea versus the best from Europe in front of a huge and amazing audience.
And I gotta say, I think this is a match that Nerchio could win, but it's not gonna be easy.
No, it certainly is not. Stats is considered by most at this point to be the best Protoss out there. And certainly a lot of his games have looked that way. He's so solid. That's what we're always talking about, Stats. So solid, so solid. So I think as well, not only is this going to be a close match, I think it's going to be a very long one.
I agree. I think we could very easily go all the way to Game 5 here. Nerchio, definitely a Zerg player who approaches the race as well as the matchup, Zerg versus Protoss, quite differently from what Stats is used to. Especially within European Zergs, the meta is very different from the way that a lot of these Korean Zergs handle it. Now, obviously, Stats is aware of that. Stats has prepared something for us, but is it going to work? I don't think Stats has a lot of opportunities to play Nerchio, or frankly, anybody that plays like him, because Nerchio is the very best at Zerg in Europe.
Yeah, no, he plays such a different style from the Korean Zergs for sure. So he's bringing the more European meta in against the more Korean meta. So we'll see how that ends up turning out. But I think that gives Nerchio an even better shot than if he was still, of the same caliber and a Korean player. Then Stats would be completely comfortable in this match.
And keep in mind, Stats is an incredibly well-rounded Protoss. Any type of build he's going to go for, he does it perfectly. And he also strikes me as a player that wasn't doing so much of copying the other people around him, but really coming up with his own style. So in some ways, these players are similar in that respect.
Oh, well, this is going to be a crazy elevator. What would you say, Tasteless? Who's taking it?
I don't know, man. I mean, Stats is pretty good, but Nerchio definitely has a shot. I don't know if I can make any prediction here.
All right, well, the hometown crowd definitely going to be on Nerchio's side. We'll see. It looks like the game is starting on Abyssal Reef for map number 1.
All right, guys, let's make some noise. Let's get hype. We are going into game number 1, Stats versus Nerchio. In the upper left, in the red, he is Nerchio! And his opponent here in the bottom right in the blue from South Korea, he is Stats!
Abyssal Reef, our first map here of this best of 5. Definitely a very weird map, maybe the most fun map within the new map pool. And has a lot of
what
small
goes
chokes.
up does not come down on this map, Artosis.
Floats right up to the top of the
Floats
ocean.
right to the top.
But, this map in particular, I feel like this is one where any sort of Immortal push, any sort of Sentry rush is going to be really strong.
Yeah, I have to agree. Let's see what these guys have in store for us. Keep in mind, the best of 5 is very different from a best of 3. You have a lot more time to figure your opponent out, respond in the next game, tailor different strategies, test certain techniques out as you try to break your opponent down. So the first build order from each player in a best of 5 can say a lot. Sometimes we see players bring out very unusual strats in the first game to try to throw their opponent off, or perhaps they try to cheese, do something they really can't use again. Of course, it's also very dependent on the map and the matchup as well. On some maps, some strats are simply put not viable.
Yeah. I would say that there are some that are not too viable on this map. Like, you're not going to probably see Nerchio go mass roaches or something.
Yeah, I agree.
Horsefield's going to be too strong. But we're going to have to see how Stats wants to open and what Nerchio wants to do against that, because he did mix in some really cool stuff yesterday, or the day before, rather, where he went, for instance, for double speed Zergling drop right off the bat against Zest.
Yeah, that's very true. You can definitely be quite abusive that way in this matchup and on this map as well. We're going to have a hatchery going down here at the third base. We do have pretty traditional tech here from Protoss going for the Stargate. He'll most likely be getting an Oracle out here to try to peek in, do some damage, and possibly from there going into Phoenixes. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it is a possibility. We've seen a little bit of that at this tournament already. But the likely course of action will probably be Oracle, a few Adepts, take a third base pretty quickly off of this as well.
Ling speed nearing completion. For the time being, it's going to be a little bit slow as both these guys are trying to just get all the pieces together so they can get some momentum in their respective races. We do see 2 more gateways going down here to make a nice wall off. And from here, it's going to be a little bit tricky. He could try to do some Adept pressure, which is certainly not uncommon in this matchup, as long as he's aware of counterattacks and plays it safe. We might also see more than one Oracle. This isn't completely insane, but
yeah,
there's a few variances. And of course, we want to see how many gateways does the Protoss go for later on. Does he try to go for Glaives for some kind of crazy rush or all in, or is it just Glaives because Glaives is pretty good to have as he techs up and has a more balanced army?
Well, I do wonder how much of an understanding of Nerchio's style Stats has. I know that they've played in the past and Nerchio has taken out Stats sometimes, but like specifically, if you try to get too aggressive against him, I think that's where he picks up a lot of his victories. a lot of people think of him as a late game macro player, but I think the better way to think of Nerchio is he's got basically the best early and mid game defense of anyone, and he'll kill you because you messed up against him trying to attack.
Yeah, that's very true. He's very, very tough to crack. We have a few more sentries coming out here as Protoss is just trying to build all the pieces up. With the 2 Oracles, it's really tricky for the Zerg to ever try to come down there and get that Nexus. The Oracle is such a multifaceted unit. It's really interesting. When we first saw this in Legacy of the Void, I originally just thought of it as a harass unit, but it can do a lot more. Obviously, they can kill off some workers, but you can end up tagging the army, which makes, especially for Zerg in this case, counterattacks being so strong, something that you could deal with. And you never want to lose the Oracles. Ideally, the entire game, they stay alive. They're not something that's really ever worth it to trade out in a fight. And good job here. Takes out only, 2 drones there. Could have been 4, but he didn't quite get those last 2 bruise drones.
Yeah, nice micro there overall by Stats. But, you know, it looks like Stats is just playing pretty standard. You know, a couple Oracles, a Void Ray to chase around some Overlords, make sure Roaches don't get too crazy, and going into Robo and Twilight and some upgrades. Whereas Nerchio here, I like this. This is very European styled. He's going for Roach speed, but also the Hydralisk Den. And that's going to give him a very beefy army in the early game.
Looks like this Queen is going to be gunned down, and just in time before that Oracle is picked up. He's going to be very careful with that Oracle over there. That's about 1 hit away. There it is. Unfortunately,
about or
exactly
1 hit away.
Exactly 1 hit. I wasn't sure when the shields are going to start coming back there, depending on the engage, but nicely done. Definitely, I think it's more okay to lose a Queen than it is to lose that 1 Oracle.
Yeah,
so, that was actually a misplay there by Stats. Obviously, you never want to lose ideally anything in the game, but the Queen is certainly more forgivable than the Oracle because Protoss can make out of the Stargate sometimes for a while, and it's sort of like when the Protoss loses Robo units, although not as dramatic, but if Protoss loses like an Observer
he won't
and 2 Immortals,
that.
Yeah, exactly.
The Oracle was icing for the rest of the game, but now that he doesn't have it, it's not like he's going to buy a new one, so he just has a single one to tag, throw it on Stasis Ward, scout with, maybe harass a bit. We'll see what he gets done with that, but right now, both sides just kind of getting the upgrades that they need, charge for stats as well as +1, pumping out his Immortals, whereas Nerchio focusing on making his Hydralisk more valuable.
We have the Warp Prism up here. It has been spotted by an Overlord, so most likely this won't do anything but maybe take out a few drones, assuming that the Zerg isn't ready, and I think Zerg has definitely had enough time to be prepared for this. Here comes the drop right now. It's going to try to target down. It looks like nothing. He initially went for the Queen, but then seeing the other Queens there, as well as the Hydra's coming up, he has to back up. So what Stats wants to do for the time being with that is use the Warp Prism as a pin. He's going to pin the Protoss, or rather the Zerg to this side of the map, so that if Zerg does leave and Zerg does start to put pressure on the Protoss, he can drop those Adepts and warp in a lot and maybe take out workers or some critical tech.
And also trying to kind of figure out what Nerchio's doing, but unfortunately for him, Nerchio started, okay, he threw down a Baneling Nest as that was coming into his main base, but I don't know that we'll necessarily see Banelings. Instead, once the drop left, he started the Lurker Den, which is super powerful on this map. There's so many places you can put Lurkers that are hard for Protoss to attack into.
Yeah, you're certainly right about that, Artosis. You want to have Lurkers get surrounded so their spikes can't be utilized as effectively, but in this map that has lots of valleys, it can be pretty tough. Hydra's now coming down. He does isolate those 2 Roaches and could possibly get the 3rd, but he has to be careful. 3 Immortals in the back. Some of the sentries over here in the front, but low on energy. Seems as though Stats has zoned Nerchio out. Nerchio going to go back without overextending. A good play by both sides.
Yeah, he sniped a little bit there, killed off a few units, used up energy, even got a High Templar before his Psystorm was done. So all good moves indeed, and now that he's pulling back and make more Hydras, the next push will include Lurkers. And if Stats is not ready for that, with this type of unit composition that he has, your Prism has to do a lot of work.
That's right.
You have to pull the Zerg out of position so you can kill those Lurkers.
Okay, he's going to try to edge forward here. The Hydras are retreating since they have been tagged. 2 Hydras do go down. I think actually having stats pushed out on the map here a little bit can be a good thing against the lurkers, because if you can try to fight them and force them to burrow, then you can back up, try to warp in more units, and eventually have enough. The eggs are just north of this screen. There they are right now, but it doesn't look like stats is going to overextend.
Yeah, he actually sees them due to the tag on those Hydras. That's really valuable for stats to see just how many lurkers that Nerchio has decided to make right now.
A storm goes down over there. Hydras and lurkers now rotating to the right. Stats should be somewhat cognizant of this. He's going to have to try to intercept this. We'll see in a minute here with Nerchio, by the way, maxing out. Oh, a Zealot counterattack over here in the upper left. And it looks like he goes for the Queen. And now for a lot of these drones, lurkers coming down to try to burrow.
Yeah, the lurkers can clean that up, but they're going to deal a lot of damage in the meantime. A nice tag on those lurkers over on the other side so we can see them while they're burrowed. And I feel like Stats is playing really well, especially considering he's adding the Fleet Beacon and another Stargate.
As you can see here, the Zealots are cleaned up, but it's really not a big loss for the Protoss. The Zealots are by far the most dispensable units that Protoss really have. So just trying to draw them out of position there is a good idea. A few storms blanketing this area over here. A few other Hydras coming over here to the right, but then intercepted by these Zealots.
Yeah, Zealots with charge going to just slay any Hydralists that are left out in the open. But of course, when he backs up into his lurkers, he's going to be fine. Now, Stats, he has a couple Stargates, and he starts Tempest. This is going to help him to push back against any incoming lurker pushes.
Okay, he's coming here. Really nice storms there on those few lurkers. He's going to take all of them out that were in that area. A big loss there for Nerchio. Still two more lurkers down there at the bottom. The tagged Hydras are going back up here to the upper left, as he's going to have to remake those lurkers if he wants to have the right unit composition. The Immortal count has become huge this game, and I don't know if Nerchio forgot about those lurkers down there, because it seemed like there was no reason strategically for them to be placed there. So the pressure really starting to kick in here for Nerchio as he's now backing up.
Yeah, he hasn't been able to really do too much, but at the same time, he hasn't really taken damage from Stats. Sure, we had a couple Zealot harassments, some Oracles early on, but nothing too big of a deal. So Nerchio still has quite a bit, and in fact, starting his push.
Some nice storms coming down here. The Hydras move forward. Stats is kiting his army back, and it doesn't look like Nerchio really does that much damage. Now rotating around here. Some Hydras on the far right, others going down through the center, and a counterattack here by Stats.
Ooh, that counterattack could do some good work considering most of his army is over here. Nerchio really needs to pay attention to his attack. A few Hydras hitting the third base as well, but it looks like Nerchio has set up some static D to stop Stats from hitting his third.
Okay, with the Tempest here, it's, oh my god, that is a lot of gateways that are unpowered there. A good little harass there by Nerchio. Right now, Nerchio's trying to have armies spread out in multiple different locations. He's hoping that, because guys, to be completely frank with you, the Protoss army is pretty clunky.
Yeah.
I mean, with Immortals and Sentries, Templars, nothing is moving fast. So if you can get them in a bad position, now granted, Hydra Lurker is not the fastest Zerg comp in the game, so there's a lot of muscle with Nerchio's army, but it is a little bit sluggish. The idea is good, but so far it hasn't had a huge effect. Even when he unpowered those gateways, Stats was basically maxed out, so it wasn't really the end of the world. But it is forcing Stats to stay honest in this game.
No, it's definitely, I like that he's being active without wasting units and doing some reasonable harass. What do you think about this Infestor switch? He's going into Infestor and Neural Parasite. We've seen this a lot from Nerchio this weekend.
This is the thing, or at least one of the things, that makes Nerchio especially such a different player. I think it's pretty awesome. It's pretty sexy when it works with his Neural Parasite. I don't know if it's proper. I don't know if it's the best way to play. And you can be incredibly good and get high ranks on ladder and beat a lot of good players, but can you win Intel Extreme Masters with this? I don't know. I guess we're going to be finding out here. Good poke in. Note that the Zerg really can't expand anywhere else on the map without Protoss probably coming in for a few really easy pokes, doing damage, and then just walking back to easily defend the additional Protoss bases that he has.
Yeah, and you can't even flank him here, you know, but that's part of the reason why Nerchio has this comp anyways. He's going for lurkers because you can't really flank. So whenever we see Stats poke in like that, it's not like he can lose his army, and we'll see Nerchio make some moves like that going forward, I think, where if Stats' army isn't sitting right there, he can get a lot done.
Another little harass here. I want to point out, if we can just like zoom out of this game for a second, this has been a very conservative game from both sides. There's been a little bit of action, but both of these guys are erring on the side of caution. We may, in fact, have the first big attack coming up here now. Let's see how far Stats decides to move in here. Hydra's now rotating around to the bottom side. Lurkers as well. Is this going to be a surround? We have Neural Parasite here being used as well.
Oh, he goes ahead and knurls one of the Tempests, targeting down the other right away. A bunch of Infestors still coming up, grabbing absolutely anything he can, and Nerchio might be able to break this, but a lot of his units still going down.
I don't know, he seems to be having a very hard time with this. Suddenly Zealots and Adepts everywhere. That Warp Prism finally coming into play about 15 minutes into this game. The push is coming in, and I think, to be honest, the unit composition here, yeah, that's it, GG! The unit composition from Nerchio, just not able to cope with the complexity of the Stats army, which took him the entire game to develop.
That's right.
All the tools were there. And look, Hydra Lurker is scary. It's hard to deal with. But because Stats played so safe, stayed back, he eventually had a comp that was just a little bit stronger. Great game there. 1-0 win right now here for Stats. Claris, what's going on at the analyst desk? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, we are going to go into this next game in a second. Bart, go ahead.
I gotta say, like, the Neural stuff, I've really enjoyed watching it from Nerchio, but again, it was a little bit underwhelming, right? First couple Neurals come out, it gets exciting in the battle, but it didn't really do enough for Nerchio. I feel like he needs to actually maybe switch it up a little bit, play late game more like some of the other Zergs. Some tech switches, you know, trying to actually get something done more in the mid game, because when he's sitting around with Lurker Hydra only, and then Stats gets an army like that, it's very hard to actually come up and kill him.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's his preferred mode of playing PvZ in general, or if it was just on that map. Because the way that Nerchio handles that, it seems like Stats was completely in his comfort zone. This is a great audience, by the way. You guys are awesome. This was a unit composition that just didn't seem to be a threat to Stats at all.
No, he always was in the right position as well, I have to say. Big kudos to Stats for that.
Yeah.
If you walk out of position, we saw Nerchio a few times moving his whole army, like when Stats poked up and killed the 5th, that was morphing. Nerchio started to move around, excuse me, so that he could hit the 3rd and 4th, but was unable to do so because Stats immediately pulls back.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if in some of the other games that Stats has played, the Protosses are trying to attack in too much, losing too many units, and then Neural Parasite gets really strong later on because some of that unit comp has been eliminated. I don't believe there was any real key units that Stats lost that entire game until the big fight. And that's a scary thing about Protoss. They have so many tools, so many abilities at their disposal if you let them get there. And I think Nerchio wanted to fight early and Stats stayed out of it. And that's why right now, Stats has a 1-0 lead in this best of 5. Going into our game number 2, in the bottom right, in the red from Poland, he is Nerchio! And his opponent here in the upper left, in the blue, he is Stats!
All right, I don't think we're going to see the same type of play out of Nerchio here. Not really expecting him to go directly into Lurkers, but we'll have to wait and see. There's a lot of paths, a lot of high grounds on this map where a unit like that can, in fact, be useful.
You know, I'm not too worried here for Nerchio because I think he's a player that does have a lot of different ways to approach a matchup like this. And he's certainly a guy who's had enough success around the world in StarCraft II that I don't think he's going to be that phased by game 1.
Yeah.
But I think we're on the same page here, Artosis. Nerchio has to have a different approach here coming into game number 2. Game number 1 did not look like a game where Nerchio just didn't quite get to do what he wanted to do. Granted, he did lose a bunch of those Lurkers at one point.
Yeah.
I think he lost like 5 or 6 Lurkers.
Maybe, yeah.
In a fight. I don't think there was any moment where those lurkers were going to come in and do any damage
No.
as long as a Protoss is playing properly. And you really can't play a game in the hopes that your opponent's going to make a mistake. Not if you're going to win a giant tournament like the Intel Extreme Masters. I'm not saying that's what he was trying to do, but that's sort of how the game ended up looking like. It's
Yeah.
like Stats just didn't make any errors, and I guess that's not going to beat him on that map.
I think that you're basically right about that, Tasteless. Like, Nerchio is waiting for Stats to maybe attack in or get out of position, and then he's ready to pounce. But we've seen multiple games so far, like against Zest and against Stats, where these guys make so few mistakes that Nerchio is mostly just sitting at home and deciding, like, well, okay, I guess it's Neural Parasite time.
Normally in a best of 5, a player will cheese at least once to try to throw the other player off, because most of the games are not cheeses in a best of 5, because you can't cheese over and over and over, then you never win because they just get ready to defend it. But we don't have anything like that here in game number 2. So far for Nerchio, it's looking to be a pretty middle of the road macro game. We have the Stargate coming here again. Now, even though we said Nerchio might have to mix it up, I don't know if Stats has to here.
No, I think he can play basically the same. That was a tried and true Protoss build, right? You get some Oracles out, they scout, they defend, they do whatever you need, and then you take a third base and just start a mortal production. That's solid play.
To be frank, I think Stats can almost treat game number 2 in a more exploratory manner of just testing the waters. Let's see what he does. And I like the way that Stats is played based off the kind of player we know he is. He's pretty solid, so he just opens up safe and sees what Nerchio did. It worked. What Stats was doing, it worked perfectly. He won very handedly there at the end in a pretty one-sided fight. So it seems to me like in game 2, why would you not just do the same thing and see if you can pull it off again? Just kind of be ready for everything.
Well, he's changing it up at least a little bit right now, getting the Twilight rather quickly after the first Oracle.
Oh, excuse me, did he get a Twilight?
Yeah,
I was so busy looking in your doe eyes or toes, I didn't see it. So he does have a Twilight coming up here. So yeah, that is a little bit of a variation, but nothing too insane. We'll see if he gets Glaives right away or what.
Yeah, we'll see how many gates he goes for, all that good stuff. A Void Ray coming out. He did make one last game as well, kind of chasing around Overlords. And in fact, immediately going towards drones.
He does come in there with that one Oracle. We see Glaives is now on the way. Right now, Nerchio trying to drone up furiously in order to get that proper tech. Evo Chamber on the way as well.
Now, this is all pretty standard overall from Nerchio. We'll see if he wants to do any drops or anything of that sort. Some pretty good creep spread already coming out. But when is Stats going to take his third base? Looks like, yeah, just about now.
Good timing on that one.
That was going to be late if he wasn't going to do it just about now.
Answered that immediately. We have plenty more Adepts coming out here. The Zerg has to be very careful when those Glaives are done. It's pretty hard to fight them. The Void Ray gets a lot of good functionality here by just driving out all the Overlords or any even straylings on the map. And of course, you can use that to help protect the third Nexus as well.
Yeah. Now, Roach Speed is on the way. We've got that +1 melee as well, but Glaives are going to be finishing pretty soon here for Stats, who has a decent chunk of gateways and a decent chunk of Adepts. The thing is, to Nerchio right now, this should look very similar to the build that he was using before.
Yeah.
So he's probably not going to expect this many Adepts hitting him. This could really catch Nerchio off guard.
Yeah, Stats has actually masked this pretty well, and this is another really good way to approach this after you have the game number 1. This build could look similar to somebody after that first game, and then these Adepts, as you were saying, Artosis, come in here. This could really catch the Protoss, or rather the Zerg, off guard. He's coming in here with these Adepts right here, right now. And we see the drones on the run. Meanwhile, he's shading. He may cancel. Yes, he will, because these drones are isolated here on the left side of the map. Now retreating to where there is no hatchery to go to. The Oracle can come in here and massacre these workers. Meanwhile, the Shades moving down here to the natural, and there are too many drones and nothing to defend.
Uh-oh, Nerchio is getting caught really off guard here. Some Roaches are hatching out, so maybe we'll be able to get something done, but a big shade into the main base occurs.
Stats is everywhere. It's a game of cat and mouse, and Stats is destroying so many workers here. Another shade. Looks like he just barely doesn't get that queen, kiting these lings and these roaches as he then goes into the natural.
Still picking off as many drones as he possibly can, even killing off a few roaches with these Adepts. 20 drones killed off. All in the meantime, Stats is adding gateways, getting a second robotics. I mean, he's got a huge economy as well.
Nerchio has been rocked. We may see a knockout blow incoming here. But first of all, Nerchio wants to move out on the map with these roaches. Now, of course, that the Void Ray being on the map means the roaches have to respect the map dominance here from Stats. So Nerchio already attempting to maybe come out here, see if there's any stray units he can get, anything at all, get some map presence. He's denied that.
Yeah, this has been a very solid game from Stats. And as you can see, has a big lead at the moment. That's not to say that Nerchio is 100% dead, but he's going to have to pull some pretty sweet moves if he's to come back in this game.
I agree. These gateways are just now finishing. I don't think the Protoss has to take another base anytime soon. I would just power up and keep your eyes peeled on the map where if Zerg takes the fourth, because the fourth base is very tough. In a situation like this for Zerg to get, that's definitely going to be something Stats wants to punish.
No, I agree with you right there. Like, that is going to be the place where Stats might even be able to end this game. But in the meantime, he's going to get a little bit of scouting and harassment done for a depth drop into the main base, even picking off the Queen. Wow, doing probably more damage than he was even looking for, to be honest.
Right now, there are so many tools at the disposal here of Stats. This is going to be really tough for Nerchio. I'm not even sure what the right plan is to play this out, other than to control really well when Stats does eventually attack in here.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either. I mean, he's taking a fourth, getting Baneling speed. He will have +2 melee, so that's nice. A few Ravagers out on the map. And he did put down an infestation pit, but he hasn't done anything with it quite yet.
Yeah, and with the fourth base not kicking in yet, you can actually see the supply right now for Stats is ahead. And I think in a moment the gateway cooldown is going to end, and he can actually warp in even more right as this attack starts up here. The army now moving into the center of the map. The warp prism now moving to merge with the army to reinforce this, as it looks like Nerchio may be in some trouble. Banelings are marping. He's going to go ahead and try to push what looks maybe to be in the third. No, just tagging those Banelings so he can't get caught off guard. Great play by Stats.
I love that tag. Absolutely. Amazing moves here. And as he warps in more and more Stalkers, he has a good set of sentries. Even a Void Ray and Immortals to help out. Here we go. Some Biles go down. They do push him back and injure that Void Ray. But this attack is looking to kill off that fourth base.
We see again the corrosive biles landing, force fields going down. The Ravager's not quite able to come in here and do any damage. The hatchery getting lower. The Banelings come up. They connect with some of those sentries. Lings on the right. They are, it looks like, intercepting that warp prism, but they have not knocked it out of the sky just yet.
Oh man, an Immortal does end up falling, but the amount of value that Stats getting, oh my god! 4 Adepts over in the natural at the same time.
The hatchery
Nerchio is taking damage everywhere.
That's right. The hatchery goes down. The Stalkers and the Immortal continue to push in here. I think the third is under threat as well. And I don't know if Nerchio can hold on. 153 supply to 110. Corrosive Biles come down and miss, as Stats is not giving up. He wants to end this game.
He might be able to do so as well. Blinking forward here, picking off so many Ravagers, and GG.
Wow.
Stats gonna take game number 2.
Stats is looking so prepared in this series. He handled this absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, that was really, really good. The fact, like, he made it look just like game 1. So Nerchio's probably sitting there, he's like, okay, that's a solid build. You did Stats. You're going to do it to me multiple times. That's fine. I know how to defend this. But then a bunch of Adepts out of nowhere start ravaging his drones, and Stats never let control of the game go after that.
And I think the second attack that we saw happen back there, it was fairly straightforward. He did so much damage, he killed so many drones, and whenever you kill that many drones, the Zerg can't not remake the drones. So because he spends all his larva on the drones, he didn't make any attacking units. He couldn't make any attacking units, and that forced him into a situation where he gets run over.
All right, well, we're going to check in with the analysis desk and see what they think of that game. I think it was pretty good. What do you guys think?
I think it was pretty good as well, Artosis. It was a good game. Stats looking absolutely on fire here. He plays a very suffocating style by the looks of things. And I should mention before we do come to things, we've lost a pig. I don't know where he's gone. I do apologize for that.
Game 1 was just super solid. I was actually worried for Stats because I feel like when Nerchio reaches his comfort zone and lurkers, he's one of the best in the world at controlling the situations. He's got so much practice and so many series against Showtime that I thought Stats might be in trouble, but he was just so solid the whole way, and I kind of picked him apart. He made that style look just unviable.
Yeah.
Then game 2, Adepts early on do so much damage. Stats lost, I think it was 12 Adepts to kill basically an entire army of drones, units, like left and right. And then after that, he sets up for a big follow-up push. And it's funny because I was paying close attention to what he was going to go into. And as he was doing a ton of drone damage, he started up a huge amount of gateways. And he was already planning the follow-up attack. So we can jump into a replay here.
Yes, we can.
So I can show you guys basically the setup for the final engagements, where there was the tag that happened just under this setup right there on a chunk of the army of Nerchio, where you could see a lot of these Banelings. Because if you look at this Protoss army, it's dangerous, but it entirely relies on the force fields. And this is what's important there. So Stats, he's going to put his War Prism in a safe position, and he's already setting up the Adepts to be sent in another base, so that Nerchio can basically completely fall apart from there. Reinforces with a ton of Stalkers, and actually what I really want to highlight as well is the micro against Corrosive Bile. Barely any Corrosive Bile hit. Like, there was some that hit there in the weekend that Void Ray, but other than that, I actually feel like even like a lot of these are actually very hard to see. Like, look at this. He pulls back just in the middle.
And the good thing about it is, with the force fields being where they are, the Zerg army can't get in a position to then push him back beyond where the hatchery is.
And the thing is, if you're Nerchio there, you can't basically let this base die, because otherwise you've lost the game anyway. So now, like, the Adepts were sent elsewhere. He reinforced from behind. War Prism was in a good enough position that there was not going to be enough for Nerchio to take it out. And when you have this many Blink Stalkers, it's just like the old days. You just blink back if you have to, and you power through, and then Nerchio from there just not solid enough to stay alive in this game. It was just fantastic play here from Stats.
And behind that was taking economic damage towards the second base as well, by the looks of things. So very, very and in the main base. Geez, Stats all over the place. It feels like, I said it yesterday, and I thought to myself, is Nerchio still susceptible to those early engagements against Protoss? And, you guys at the desk were like, well, not so much anymore. But Stats kind of breaks that trend again and makes Nerchio look really vulnerable in the early game.
It should be not so much anymore, asterisk, except against Stats. Stats is just so incredibly good right now. This is very worrying for Nerchio. He's going to have to be playing better than that. I don't even know if that will suffice, but he has to here. At this point, Stats is just on point with everything, and it's really showing through in these games.
All right, well, thank you very much, Todd, as we do now head back to the commentary team for Stats versus Nerchio, game number 3.
If you're just now joining us right now, Stats is up 2-0 against Nerchio in a best of 5. So far, Stats looks to be prepared for everything. He's gone into this, and basically everything he's tried to do is work. Now, that doesn't mean that Nerchio can't come back. We've seen that before, but it's going to be tough.
He hasn't taken really any damage in either game. That's pretty impressive against
nothing went wrong.
Yeah, no.
So far in this series for Stats,
everything is on plan. He had a mental checklist. He went down it, and the worst thing that has happened to him is that he lost one Oracle in a game. That literally, like, nothing has happened to him.
I guess that's true.
This is like someone who lives to be 90 and never breaks a bone. It's crazy.
Guys, let's get ready. Let's get hype. Introducing our player in the bottom left on his home turf. He is Nerchio. And his opponent here in the bottom right, in the blue, he is Stats.
Newkirk Precinct gonna be the map where Nerchio makes his stand. He's gotta win here, or unfortunately will be out of the rest of the tournament. Would be a sad thing to see him go, but Stats at the same time. Last Protoss left in this whole tournament, Tasteless. Both these guys really gonna fight here.
Yeah, I got my fingers crossed here for Nerchio. I just don't know if he can actually 3-0 Stats after Stats dominated so hard in these games. But look, we've seen stuff like this happen before. And these are the best moments in esports, a crazy comeback. Stats, of course, has already farmed a lot of data on Nerchio, how he plays, how he reacts, how his army moves.
Certainly.
So it's going to be a pretty tall order, but I think if there's anybody who can do it, it would be Nerchio.
Okay, so What would you tell Nerchio here? What should he be going for? Or do you think like he should go for Ling drops, a Bane all in, maybe just right into like a Hydra Bane timing? Should he try another macro game without Infestors? What do you think?
I would say don't go for the cheese or anything like that in game 3, because that's usually the most predictable build. If you're down 0-2, is you're like, oh god.
So you think
you cross your fingers and run the Banelings and you're like, please. I don't think that would be the best move. Sometimes the one that looks like it's not the best move is the one that you do anyways, because the other guy's like, I know that you know that I know.
Yeah.
That kind of game. I would just say take the last 2 games, see, know what happened and where you went wrong, and try to fix it this time around. And that's one of the hardest things to do if you're down 0-2. As far as playstyle goes, do you have anything to add to that? I'm not really sure about unit comps for stats because I feel like he's so well-rounded. There's no real weakness to exploit in stats.
No, it's very true. He plays such a stable style, but maybe if he can find. The thing is, I think about Nerchio's other games, and I think about the Protoss players that he beat and how he beat them, and they're really fantastic pro gamers, but no one is so holeless as Stats. Like, he's literally holeless. He'll have something in the little hole that lets him out of his wall in even, so you can't even run Lings by, Yeah. He's going to be so solid in all these ways, so I don't mind if he goes into the macro game again, Nerchio, that is, but this Neural Parasite stuff so far is not cutting it.
I agree. Well, I just don't know. I'm still new to it, so I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And it looks like if you had never dealt with it, it could be hard to handle. But so far, we're not really getting to that point here. And if you have this great strategy that works, but you have to get to the late game or the end game, I think you don't focus on that as much as you do just trying to get to the late game and end game cleanly.
Yeah.
Try to get there and make that ride as smooth as possible, because there's a lot of moments in PvZ. If the Zerg doesn't do anything aggressive, the Protoss has all these points where they can start to attack and then try to outposition the Zerg and start massacring drones.
Yeah, and the Stats will be on top of all of those positions as well. We will see him with the Prism this game, no doubt. He will be shading in, shading out, trying to pick off anything he can. In this game, he's gone for a slightly different build, definitely opening with very fast Adepts and Glaives, and a quick Robo with that as well.
Now, remember, from game 1, which was super standard, proper Protoss play to get to late game, to game 2, which was disguised to look like game 1, and then he came out here with a rush that just bullied Nerchio into an economically horrible position. In game 3, initially, until you realize there's no air units coming, this sort of looks like what kind of happened in game 2, but now it's another variation where he's going for this aggro play. He's getting that Warp Prism. I hope that Nerchio is ready for this, but I got to say, Stats came in this really prepared in each game with a different technique that kind of looked like the game before.
And this game, he has these fast Adepts. Nerchio just lost a game to a big Adept push, basically. That's where it started to go wrong, at least. So he's got the Roaches trying to counter this, but a Prism is on the way, and if Nerchio gets out of position, you know as well as I, Stats will be in that main base, wrecking drones.
The third base is now being taken here. Warp Prism out, 3 sentries.
Yeah, I was thinking for a second that he might try something a little bit cheeky, like force me on the ramp.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as well.
Doesn't look like that's the case, though. Just picking up 4 Adepts, taking his third base. And I think he's preparing like a massive Immortal Sentry Adept push.
Yeah, it looks like it. So rather than trying to do a big push here with this Adept and Warp Prism, what he wants to do is do a little bit of harass, try to keep the Zerg moving back and forth, and this secures Stats to have a safe third base. And then from there, what he can do is mass up and wait for the Zerg to take the fourth. The fourth is going to have to be more towards the Protoss. Zerg can take the very, very top, but against Adepts, all your bases are very far from each other.
That can be pretty scary indeed. Like Protoss, especially the Warp Prism, warping in different locations, send your army somewhere, gets pretty tough. But as is right now, Nerchio just getting that melee attack, almost on Roach speed, actually making quite a few Roaches. And against Immortal Adepts with Glaives and Sentries, that's going to do pretty well against Roaches.
I would say so. Hoping for Nerchio here. So far, by the way, Nerchio hasn't made any major mistakes. We were talking about that earlier, how a lot of the other games have been pretty bumpy, but so far so good here. Now, the attack that will eventually be inbound here from Stats is still going to be very scary. Nerchio is going to have to handle that perfectly, but I would say so far, I think Nerchio is doing a very good job.
Yeah, he's done everything he really needs to do for the time being. Has a decent amount of Ravagers out, a good Roach army, and I think he knows basically what Stats is up to. And that's why he adds this Baneling Nest. You are definitely going to need to have a few Banelings connect with Adepts. Once you get Speed Banes, Adepts kind of fall out of style.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very easy to pick them off. The Immortals continue to increment out as we have more gateways on the way. A little Adept poke in here takes out about 2 drones, actually even a little bit more than that, as there wasn't really that much to take this on. So 6 kills overall. Good targeting there by Stats.
Yeah, very well done. Even scouting completely with these hallucinations, he's going to be able to tell exactly what's going on. 2 Immortals at a time. Charge on the way. Templar Archives coming up. This is the stability we've been talking about, and Nerchio is going to have to do something special here.
I like that Stats pushed forward on the map to get the sentries far enough along that when he makes the hallucinated phoenixes, he can get them all the way across the map before they expire. Although I don't believe has he scouted the very top center?
No, I don't think he knows about that.
He doesn't know about that. And we may have a poke in here from Nerchio. It's 151 supply to 134.
This is a really good amount of Ravagers right now. A ton of Corrosive Vials coming down, almost killing 2 of those gateways already. So the next volley absolutely will be able to do so.
This is smart play. Those are free structures there.
Yeah.
You know, that does keep the Nexus a little bit safer, but yeah, losing those gateways is certainly going to be annoying. That's going to have to be something that Stats will remake.
Look, this is going better and better for Nerchio right now. He's almost done with Baneling speed. Stats hasn't pulled off any
I
attacks.
believe there's something happening in the upper left of the map. Okay, so he's got a warp in happening over here. He's making a few more Zealots. This is going to drive out drones. I don't believe he should be able to kill the hatchery, but we'll see.
At least he's going to force a lot of units back here to make sure. And that means that any attacks on this side of the map can't really do too much. Like, sure, you can open that up, poke into the 4th Nexus, but he can't bring all his units over here because of the Warp Prism near his 4th.
So Stats in the upper right is beginning to expand while this Warp Prism is flying around. This is one of the things you can do to punish people that are going for Roach Ravagers. It's very hard for them to knock that Warp Prism out of the sky. Oh! Oh, an absolute massacre there. So many Immortals. In the blink of an eye, Nerchio getting about 1/3 of his army destroyed.
That was really rough. Even threw down those Corrosive Vials so quickly, but the damage output of those Immortals was massive, and down went such a nice chunk. Look at the army that Stats has put together. It is super strong.
He's basically been building this Immortal count up the entire game. He has Archons with this army, Templars, and a Warp Prism that could come in to help reinforce a big attack. Is he going to push out? It's certainly looking like it as he's cemented his position in the upper right.
Well, this would be a great time considering just now the Spire has started as well as Neural. So Nerchio's getting ready to actually switch this up a little bit, but Stats' army at this moment is truly fearsome.
Ling's going to try to come in here for a possible counterattack, immediately spotted by that Observer and chased back out. Nerchio will have to reposition that if he does decide to go for a counter later on. I believe at the very north up here. What do we have moving up there? Some Zealots.
Ooh.
So he's hoping to try to come up over here and hit the hatchery at the top while he's pushing in with a pretty deadly army through the center.
All right, plenty of units actually sitting here waiting for those Zealots, but hey, he's losing those Ravagers out in the front. The Zealots from the Prism going into the 3rd base, and Stats is moving forward everywhere.
He's coming in now. Corrosive Fires fired out. That zones back Stats' army. Meanwhile, Zealots and Adepts doing a lot of damage. The hidden Warp Prism is warping in, causing Nerchio's army to be spread everywhere.
Stats is dealing huge amounts of damage. His main army just too hard to actually attack, and the Zealots drawing a lot of what Nerchio has up north. Luckily, the Banelings will clear him pretty quickly, but Nerchio still has to deal with all these Immortals and Archons.
The push is still incoming. The Warp Prism is still warping in. And it just seems like Nerchio may be getting in a lot of trouble here. The Immortals and Archons do come forward. Zealots now shredding up the drones.
Oh, they're dealing a lot of damage up there. And in the meantime, the main army of Stats continues to pick off a lot of Ravagers. Size Storm going down on them. This little group of Ravagers is not enough to push it back.
Yeah, it's not. And one of the problems with this is that Roach Ravager takes up a lot of supply. So even though it can be pretty scary to fight, the truth is they don't actually have a lot of units as other unit compositions you could get in StarCraft II.
No, it is certainly the case. This does not last forever as far as the unit comp goes, especially with that splash damage out and that many Immortals. Now Stats pulling back a little bit, switching into carrier tech, something Nerchio is known to not like dealing with. And this attack is really going to hurt.
The push coming in, a few corrosive biles land. I think there's enough Ravagers, he can make it nearly impossible to try to move in from that position without suffering so much damage and then eventually getting obliterated by those Banelings over there. But I think Stats is just going to rotate around. Note he's kept that Warp Prism alive. Stats really playing the game of his life so far.
He really is. This is just fantastically done. Taking his 5th base bind and going carriers, like, even if Broodlords get out, which is what Nerchio is really striving for at the moment, by the time he catches Stats' army that's poking him and eliminates it, there's going to be so many carriers out that those Broodlords will be toast.
Yeah, we see that Stats is just one step ahead. And I think Nerchio might be in a mindset where he's thinking, okay, I'm surviving this. But keep in mind, there was all that free supply because he's not making Zealots anymore. So, yeah, he can start to spend that on air units.
Yeah.
It's a very subtle thing to notice here.
Very much
but yeah,
so.
Yeah, there's nothing being added to this army. He's certainly making something. We knew he had enough supply to make at least about a dozen Zealots before.
Yeah.
That's going into carriers. He may continue to poke, even allowing some of these units to be shaved off as long as he can use that effectively, and then blindsiding Stats with this air army.
Oh man, it is just an awesome strategy by Stats that he's trying to employ here. The anti-air of Nerchio is pretty low at the moment. You know, it looks like he has a couple Queens only. 18 Ravagers can technically hit air, and that is it. We don't have any Corruptors. All the Infestors have gone. Man, these carriers are going to be brutal.
All right, he's revealed the first carrier.
5 Corruptors immediately.
Yeah, immediately being made over there. Oh! Oh my God, Stats is so good. He's
Stats
just
is
everywhere. He's just everywhere, man. We have some corrosive biles shot out here.
Oh!
2 carriers go down. However, Stats did eliminate the hatchery. That means Stats is going to be ahead in bases compared to his Zerg opponent.
Okay, 2 Broodlords blocking that Prism up top. In the meantime, Nerchio looked like he might attack this army. Didn't quite do it, though. Did that other carrier die as well?
Yeah. It got hit by corrosive
Wow.
bile in the end.
Only Nerchio sees air units and is like, I don't need anti-air. That's fine.
Yeah. You dare go carriers versus me? Very nicely done so far by Nerchio. However, Stats has way more income here. You can see he's already maxed out his minerals and supply, almost both at 2K right now, and that's not going to slow down.
Yeah, his income is madness at the moment. He's adding on some Tempest to deal with Broodlords. But you know what? Broodlords are still going to be good against this composition. The Archons don't do well against them. High Templars, Blink Stalkers, Immortals, like none of this is really fantastic against Broodlords. So I'd love to see Nerchio get a good engagement before there's too many Tempests.
And you got to keep in mind, Nerchio not only needs to destroy this army, but eventually get a counterattack up. The Stats right now just rolling in cash here. He's making cannons and all these different expansions. And of course, as scary as this Zerg army is, it's also quite clunky.
It's very slow moving around with Broodlords. You have to stay under them. Broodlords alone do nothing and get picked off very quickly. Nice Bibles, by the way, going down.
Yeah, he
Nerchio
does.
continuing to use those Ravagers very well.
And of course, with Broodlords being that slow, if they do try to attack you, you have a lot of time to try to think and come up with another location to counterattack here. Again, another hatchery denial. Frankly, guys, this is all Stats has to do to win this game is keep denying those hatcheries, rotating back and forth around the Broodlords.
Yeah. Now, Stats is going up to, it looks like, about 6 Tempests and a Mothership. So those are going to be very, very helpful indeed. There are some Corruptors out, so that can help in trying to take down that air. But with the Archons, as well as Psystorm underneath them, this is going to be a very hard army for Nerchio to actually attack.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like what we're having here from Nerchio is he wants to try to turtle up. He wants to play a long game. Now, that being said, Stats actually went, and by the way, he has 75 workers this game, way more than Nerchio. He will end up, if every expansion on the Protoss side of the map is taken, Stats will mine out first. And that should already be pretty evident that he's mined up way more minerals. If you just look at the bottom of the screen here, 55K minerals and 2.7k gas.
Wow. Well, he can remax rather quickly if he loses a big chunk of this army. Makes it even scarier for Nerchio. Normally, Protoss are the ones that are cost efficient, but that is what Nerchio is going to have to be.
Okay, he's edging in. It seems like the defense here from Nerchio has gotten a little bit better. We don't have that much static defense to the north of that, but here in the middle, it's really starting to build up. A few storms do zone the Zerg back. The Tempests, however, are a real problem here. The Tempests have the range, and even though they are a little bit sluggish, they can avoid those corrosive biles.
Okay, the Mothership core is up. Nerchio making a few infestors as well. Definitely going to be useful, but he's got to do something. This base going to fall for what, the 5th time?
I've lost count at this point in time. He's wiped out that base yet again. We see the infestors are coming here, so he could try to get a fungal to combo with corrosive bile, but you know, the longer that Stats is on this much money, the harder it is for Zerg to get this 5th base, and these are the 2 bases that Nerchio on his side of the map has really not been able to acquire.
And you know, he even solo in drones, as you point out before, that kind of caught me off guard. You know, he's only got 50 drones here, so even being maxed out, he's not raising that high in his supply.
Continuing to edge in right now. Looks like he wants to go for another possible storm if he can draw this Zerg army back here. Does not manage to take out the infestation pit. Again, it's a game where Nerchio positionally is on the ropes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really Stats' map. Stats gets to roam freely in the middle, and he's forcing Nerchio to respect that.
Well, right now, Stats poking in, trying to take out this base as well. Oh, man, Nerchio only on 4 bases for so long. Meanwhile, Stats has been on 6 for a really long time. Like, Nerchio needs to wipe this army, basically losing nothing if he's to win this game.
It does seem like Nerchio at times has trouble in this phase of the game. And it seems like a lot of their Korean Protosses know this like the back of their hand. He's actually going to come in here and try to gun down this hatchery as the clunky army here of Nerchio is going to try to come in here first around, but Stats will escape. That is cost efficiency, Artosis.
That was the most frustrating thing ever.
That was, we saw in a somewhat of a slow-mo fashion, Stats juke and jive back and forth, and as you could see that Nerchio had a real interest in trying to reacquire that lower center base that I believe has been eliminated 6 times.
Yeah.
Stats identified it immediately as fast as this slow army can move, ran up to the top, got the hatchery, and backed up. I mean, Nerchio is running out of gas here.
He really, truly is in every sense of the word, to be honest.
Yeah.
His economy has been so shattered this game over and over. Stats moving forward right now, maybe to try to get the death blow.
Yeah, at this point in time, the income has been so hiccuped by the way Stats has approached this game. I think Stats may actually want to pick a fight. Now at 11k minerals and 5k gas. This is crazy, man. He's going to do it again. You know, this is the problem when you go for those Broodlords. They are not fast. Takes out the Ultralisk Cavern as well.
Yeah, Nerchio doesn't have a whole lot left to work with here. Not even maxed out anymore at this time. Having to deal with other things from Stats as well. Like, I mean, only Stats would have a Warp Prism in your main base right now in a game in which he's microing like the strongest death ball you can even imagine.
Yeah, it's the perfect unit composition, and it just seems like Nerchio can't really deal with it. And you know, I really do want to praise Stats here for just how clean of a game this has been. I don't know that we can really go back anywhere and be like, Stats could have done this better. Not really.
No,
he's doing a really good job.
He's putting on a clinic of how to destroy one of the best macro Zergs in the world.
Nice fungals.
Yeah, does he have enough fungals though? Running up, throwing down some biles, some storms do come out.
Yeah, he didn't get the fungal corrosive bile combination. And I almost feel like Nerchio has to do something to do it quickly. He's coming in now. He's going for it. Can he wipe out this army of Stats? So many corrosive biles, so many neural parasites, and suddenly a lot of this Protoss army is going down. But take a look at this. Despite how well that went, the supply is still ahead for Stats because the moment he started losing that, he's already rebuilding his army back home.
6 Void Rays and 2 Immortals at a time right now. just getting so much, even harassing with 4 DTs in the main base.
This is so huge because keep in mind, Nerchio barely has any mining bases. So destroying even those basic tech structures, that's a lot of minerals you're gonna have to spend to try to remake that. Now making these zealots coming in here, try and hit all of these positions and forcing Nerchio to not even have the opportunity to do a counterattack.
Oh, beautifully done. While those tech units take a long time to make, just utilizing the quick warp-ins to keep him busy. Like, for instance, these didn't do that well, these Zealots and DT, but it did buy Stats that time you were talking about.
I gotta say, Stats has such a profoundly good sense of late game PvZ. He knows exactly where to go, exactly what to make, and he's continuing to deny really any econ game here from Nerchio, and Nerchio may just end up burning out here in a little bit. All these Void Rays coming in, Stats is basically setting up for the finishing blow.
Yeah, and in fact, he's taking his 7th base, you know, just because he can right now. So everything is looking still very good for him. Nerchio has taken down those rocks. He's mining again. He's getting his economy kind of back on track. Has over 50 workers. That's good, but here we go. Stats moving forward.
He's coming in now. These Void Rays doing a great job against these Corruptors. The air unit, it's for Zerg, are beginning to disappear. And this could be the killing blow. GG! Stats goes 3-0, eliminating Nerchio.
Yeah, a sad day for Nerchio being eliminated here in the round of 12. But sure, he had a great tournament indeed. It looked fantastic all week long. A tough match, though. Stats, probably the best Protoss that you're ever going to see.
All right, really nicely done there by Stats. You know, he's got to be happy after a series like that. This is really showing us how he is just such a well-rounded Protoss. He kind of didn't do anything wrong in that entire series.
No, that was almost flawless.
That was an S-class series.
Yeah.
Not even A+, but you get an S. Perfect.
It's really hard to go back and find any point in which Nerchio could have really done something to him. Nerchio played defensively, and Stats respected it, never overextended even one time, and just built into these amazing unit compositions that Nerchio has a hard time with.
We are going to go to a quick break. We come back. More awesome StarCraft II action here at the Intel Extreme Masters.